Hello everyone, welcome to the second episode, whoever thought we'd get that for, second episode of the Cloud9 Spain podcast. What we thought we'd do in today's episode is to discuss what's happening with the British buyers at the moment in the Costa Del Sol property market. Just to set some scene around this, the British buyers have always been really the predominant buying group for property here in the Costa del Sol, certainly over the last 20 years that I've been here.
I think they really helped also to build the infrastructure and the name of
Not physically.
Not physically, no, but with the money they brought.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they laid the foundation of what we have now.
Particularly further down the coast, Torremolinos, Fuengirola, Benalmádena, which were these sort of swinging 60s and 70s resorts. The Brits used to love it. But obviously we've now got a very diverse, I think, international client base.
Yes, correct.
But the Brits are still the driving force. So what we're going to discuss today is how 2019 has affected the demand of British buyers, whether they're still buying, and if so, what they're buying in terms of the type of property and also the level of budget and what they're spending. Quick introductions. My name is Sean Woolley. I'm the Managing Director of Cloud9 Spain. With me today I have Dominic Maroszek, who's the Sales Director of Cloud9.
Hello.
And by special request we have Cookie Bhoday, who's the Senior Business Development Manager at Smart Currency Exchange. The reason I brought Cookie in is because she's the expert really when it comes to who's buying what and in what currency, and how the currency markets can affect demand and supply and all sorts of things really. And she's been on the coast for how many years?
18 years.
18 years. So
12 years in FX.
Okay, so
for my sins.
So she knows what she's talking about, this one. So I think between us all, we should be able to give a decent commentary on what's happening, and also we'll have a guess at what might happen in the future. Obviously, bearing in mind the big B word of Brexit and how that
You
may.
just swore, Sean.
Yes.
That'll be beeped out. So yeah, and obviously that's on the looming on the horizon, although it has been looming on the horizon for the last 12 months. But anyway, I'm sure the last 3 years. But I'm sure we'll all have some thoughts on how things are going to develop from there. So, starting off, the question I have for you guys is: have the Brits been buying here during 2019, or have they been completely out of the market, scared stiff, not leaving the UK in fear that they're never going to be able to return? How's it been looking?
Well,
from my side, being in the FX, obviously, if you've got a Brit buyer, they need to exchange their money into euros. We have seen the Brits buying, but it seems that every time there's a date to leave the EU, that it really dries up, and then we passed the deadline of the 31st of March, and then we had a massive load of interest in Brits wanting to come back and look at property. You've got a lot of British people making inquiries to come and look at property and buy property, but when it comes to actually putting deposits down
Committing.
that's a very good point.
Different story.
That's actually what I wanted to bring up, that inquiries have been strong. Well, they've been fluctuating depending on, as you were saying, the due dates,
The timing.
timing. But they did inquire, they do view properties, but closing them down is difficult because they still get that uncertainty within them and they don't want to do the risk.
Yeah.
But I think that is with clients at a much higher level. I'm saying people buying into 5-10 million properties. They also have ways to buy with companies, with their own company structures in Gibraltar, in England. So they don't really mind it because for them there's not a big fear of loss involved.
Is that because it's not their life savings effectively?
Yes, correct.
Whereas
that's very well
somebody
said.
who may be, and this is no disrespect, but somebody who may be investing 200,000-300,000 euros, chances are they're going to be investing 100,000, 150,000.
Yeah, they take a bigger risk.
Yeah, because it's more of their money, I guess.
Exactly. So the high end for them is just, I wouldn't call it a game, but it is an investment that if it goes wrong, it will just be a minor percentage of their wealth of their net worth.
I think in terms of a corporate point of view, certainly, I mean, we've been here a long time, we've been here 18, 19 years, and what we've noticed over the last year is that inquiry levels have stood up very well from the Brits. And like you said, Cookie, they've always been the dominant market here, and the inquiry levels have been consistent. I thought they'd drop off. So it means that they still want to buy.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
But like what you guys said, we've noticed that getting them over the line is a different matter because there's just too many objections in the way at the moment.
And I think this will obviously come to a crystallization at the end.
Oh, Dom, I hope so.
I really do. It's been
Because we're all
procrastinated.
bored of this, aren't we?
The good thing is we still have a very strong interest in Spain by the British market. And now the only question is on how we are going to manage their expectations with Brexit, with them leaving and with all parties being involved or not.
Interesting thing is, I asked our staff this question the other day. I said, okay guys, we're at whatever we are, middle of November, end of November now. What percentage of our sales this year, our property sales, have been to UK buyers? How many would you think?
20%?
Yeah, I thought that. I should know, shouldn't I? It's
Yeah.
my business.
Yeah.
But
maybe around 40.
yeah, it was 44%. Dom knows the stat.
He should know.
Dom
Yeah,
knows
I
the
know.
stat. So,
He's
yeah,
your sales director,
it
you
was,
should know.
You should know, exactly. Yeah, it was 44%. So 44% of our sales have been to UK buyers. And
what
that
were their
amazed
budgets?
me. Well, higher than have been in the past.
Right, okay.
So our average budget this year has been around the €800,000 level. In the past, it's been lower than that. So like Dom said, maybe it's because the higher up the ladder you go, it sounds complacent, I know, but the less important it becomes, the exchange rate and things like that.
Absolutely.
Because you're spending a smaller proportion of your total wealth.
Exactly, everything's relative.
Yeah.
And from the perspective of wealth,
Mm.
like you were saying, there's less risk. But I've actually experienced, and I think it's very interesting to know, that during the process of Brexit, when it was first voted, a lot of British clients that I dealt with made a humongous amount of money during Brexit.
Mhm.
So they actually used that moment to make more money, and they had so much cash they needed to invest it in something. They never explained me exactly how they did the
do
Maybe
it?
we shouldn't ask any more
But
questions.
obviously,
Was his name Boris? By any chance?
Yeah.
yeah, Boris Johnson, you know.
What we have noticed is that certainly the Brits at the very high end of the market, Brexit isn't a conversation we have.
No,
It's
because-
weird, isn't it? Because you think that it would dominate every UK buyer's agenda, but the higher up the ladder you go, whatever.
Well, your tier one clients, it's not going to affect them. Brexit doesn't affect them, the exchange rate doesn't affect them because they have so much disposable income and capital that they can afford to buy a property, and even if they make a loss on it, they can afford to take that loss.
Yeah.
Whereas your average Brit buyer, 250, 300k, their holiday home is going to cost them the same or slightly less than their principal home in the UK, which is a massive outlay.
It is, of course.
And for them, when the exchange rates are fluctuating, and you've got 109 one week and then 117 another week, that's a 6-7%.
It makes a huge
It
difference,
makes
doesn't
a
it?
huge
When you're spending
difference.
£500,000
Yeah.
or €250,000, it's a lot of money.
What you have to
I
do
can't think
with
of the figure, but it's
the insecurity of the exchange rate fluctuating.
Yeah.
It's a risk that it cannot be measured.
Yeah.
no.
And people, they measure and they calculate everything. Especially when they're buying into a
Yeah.
property, everything needs to be clarified.
The interesting thing is that I agree with you, Cookie, that there were kind of a definite pattern to behaviour this year.
Yes.
So as we approached the 31st of March deadline, demand slackened off from the Brits.
Yeah.
Still the inquiries,
Yeah.
but just they wouldn't commit even any more than that. They didn't really want to have conversations. Then once that deadline passed and we were all back to square one, it was like, oh, stuff this.
Yeah.
Let's get on with it again.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then we had a spike again. And then as we approached the sort of end of the summer, when the September deadline was looming, it was like, nope, we're not doing anything until this deadline's over. And I think now, because we're faced with the election in 3 weeks, crikey, and
I know, it's frightening.
I'm flying back into the election. I'm flying to the UK
Are
on
you?
election night.
Oh, wow.
So
I
that's
wouldn't do that.
that's my TV sorted for the night.
I think it's going to be a secret referendum anyway, the election.
We're going to come on to that.
Yeah.
And I think what we're going to see is, again, I think UK buyers are going to kind of hang on and keep their powder dry until the end of January, when Boris and Steele will possibly get sorted out. And then I think we're going to see the taps turning on. That's what I think is going to happen. But we'll come on to the impact of the election in a moment.
And historically, December is a quiet month for property sales
It is.
anyway.
Yes. And I think also the other thing to point out to British buyers, because I'm British, and we sometimes think the world revolves around us.
It does,
And we are
doesn't
of course it does. And we are the only people alive. But what we have to remember is that this is an international market. Okay, it might not used to have been in the past. It used to be very Brit dominated, but there's so many nationalities buying here now. I think, I don't know how many nationalities we've dealt with this year, but a phenomenal amount. And while the UK demand is still number one, we've had a very strong year from the Swedes, although the krona has dropped off significantly in the last 6 months or so. The Belgians have been very strong, but also from all over the place. There are too many countries
We
to
had
mention.
a lot of Swiss clients.
A lot of Swiss recently. Yeah.
And some Germans.
Yeah. Is that because of you, though?
Yeah.
They just heard that you joined us.
Exactly. They were like, oh, Dom's working there.
We've
Gotta buy some.
We've got
Yeah.
to buy the brother. Yeah, but the
What's your budget
the interesting thing is that the market actually hasn't suffered any distress just because the Brits are out of it. The Brits are still in it, but they're not buying in as much bulk as they were. But there's still a lot of other nationalities taking up the supply, which is the good thing.
They're filling the gaps.
They are filling the gaps.
I'm seeing more inquiries from agents that are dealing with Middle Eastern clients now,
Right.
Yes.
as well, because they want to take advantage of the golden visa.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot more inquiries with clients from Dubai, Saudi Arabia, and the Middle East. And I know you were in the Costa Blanca recently. What we've noticed within our business, the demand for people to buy properties in the Costa Blanca is still Brit dominated, and the amount of Brits buying in the Costa Blanca, you can buy a property for 50,000 in the Costa Blanca. You can't buy that here. So the market in Costa Blanca, I think, is still very much more a Brit market than down here. It's completely cosmopolitan down here, international, loads of different accents. Whereas the Costa Blanca
relies on the UK.
It relies on the UK, and what I would say is more of the clients come more from the north of England than the south. I was at a property show on the 8th of November in Epsom, and it's a property show that the company puts on called Your Overseas Home, and every single client that applies to go to the show applies for a ticket. Every single client is qualified by the team in London. So we know what their budgets are, their timescales, where they're looking to buy. And it was busy. The show at Epsom was busy.
So what I call it is pent-up demand. The demand is there, but it's not going anywhere. What it does mean is that when the taps are turned on by Boris or whoever, it should mean that the demand sort of starts flowing through into actual sales. I think so. That's the feeling we've had for the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, we as a business have lost a significant amount of revenue, I'll be honest with you, because of Brexit. Because people at the time Brexit was, the referendum, we lost overnight. We lost, I don't know how many clients. And that's, I'm sure that there's been a lot of clients who would have invested here in Costa del Sol who have chosen not to, purely because of Brexit. And
I actually would like to frame it differently, if you allow me. We haven't lost these clients. We have put them on pause. Because I know that the sales team right now,
we need to get recruiting.
We are still in contact with all the British clients that we thought we lost. It's just they're on hold. So we entertain them. They are well informed, and when the taps open, these are still buyers that are within our database.
Absolutely.
So these people never said, "I'm never buying." They said, "For now, I need to see how things evolve." So
2020 could be an exciting year.
100%, because we have a backlash of, a lot of clients that wanted to buy back then, that will buy when it happens, and a lot of new interest that will come in. So we're doubling the interest.
Absolutely. But we have to manage the expectation of British buyers, because they think they're the only ones in the world, they will come here thinking that, no one's been buying over 3 years, so we'll have all the bargains, thank you.
And some education will always have to be applied.
One thing, the impact of the currency rate is obviously massive. We've touched on it. The fact that even just a few points difference can make a difference of thousands on the price of a property, and that affects obviously buyers and sellers. People often forget about UK sellers who are obviously selling in euros, but then taking their money back into sterling and repatriating the funds to the UK. Whilst the exchange rate has been so low, it's actually been in their favour, hasn't it?
Absolutely, because a lot of the buyers would have bought properties back in 2001, 2002, 2003, and that was when the exchange rate was 150, 155. I remember when I moved to Spain, it was 160. It was, that back in the day. So we hear a lot of clients saying, I don't want to take this offer on my property because when I bought the property I paid 145, and it's like, fantastic. However, if it was 145 now and you're repatriating your funds back, you'd be
30%
making
less.
exactly. So it's actually moved in your favour. So for us, we can actually educate the client.
But isn't it hard?
But when it moved in favour for the vendors,
Yes.
that board,
The
but not
British-
for the buyers anymore, right?
No.
So for the British buyers, it's poor, if you like, at the
Yes.
moment. For the British vendors, it's fantastic.
Now my question actually, because we always talk about buyers, but how did you see the British vendor market evolve during the time of the Brexit?
A lot more
uncertainty?
people have their properties up for sale.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
is
the
that
British
pure
vendors.
speculation or necessity?
People are worried about what's going to happen.
Yeah. I don't think it's so much driven by the exchange rate. I don't think people
No,
actually
no,
think,
no,
oh, hang on, I
no.
could make 30% on this trade.
They've come
don't
to
think like
their.
that.
Because
they've come to-
that's why I asked you. This
Yeah.
30% is
A
humongous.
lot of times, what happens is with the vendors, you see a certain age group. Every couple of years is a certain age group. They get to a certain age. Their grandparents, they're missing their grandchildren.
Yeah, of course.
Partners ill or
Yeah.
passed away.
Yeah.
They're on their own. They don't
Yeah,
want to be here,
Yeah.
and for medical reasons as well.
So
they
it's
want to
more
be back in the health
life
system in the UK.
affected reasons.
Yeah,
It's that
life-
stage. I think we all go through
Okay.
stages of life, and at that stage, I think people like to be in their home country.
It's just a human factor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when I was working at my other FX company, when it was, they made an announcement that Sky, the satellite dish, was going to move. Therefore, the Brits weren't going to get their EastEnders or Coronation Street or
Hey.
Emmerdale.
Don't knock it.
Sorry, I don't watch none of that
My relationship relies on
Um,
4 nights a week
And
EastEnders.
because they were going to not get these programmes anymore, a lot of people said they're going to go back to the UK
Wow.
Quite right.
Wow.
just because of a
Quite
TV
right.
programme.
Just because you have no decent
Wow.
soap operas in Germany, Dominic,
Wow.
don't have a
That
go
is
at ours.
shocking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shocking.
That's just cooking.
And they said-
What you do.
I don't watch those
It's
programs.
like the Germans not getting currywurst here and having to
Currywurst, I heard about currywurst.
Yeah.
My
That's the
nephew
bratwurst
likes
with
to
curry
get
sauce,
currywurst.
isn't it?
Yeah, that's literally it. But it has to be done in Germany.
Well, it has to be done in Germany.
Okay.
No one would touch. It's like having a kebab in the middle of the day. No one would do it.
Okay.
Can we
That's true.
Can we move on to the B word?
Yeah.
Because we need to talk about it. We were going to make this podcast all about Brexit, but we thought you guys would just turn off.
Yeah.
But we do have to mention it. So we are coming to a general election in the UK, and for those non-UK listeners and viewers, we do just have to set the scene here. We have the strong possibility that Mr. Boris Johnson, leader of the Conservative Party, is going to be elected in, and that his party will be able to form a majority government, which will mean that he will probably be able to force through his Brexit bill, which would mean that we leave the EU, the UK leaves the EU on the 31st of January 2020. If that happens, which seems the likely scenario at the moment, considering all the polls, what do we think will happen to the British buying market here? And the currency and the currency rates?
I think if Boris gets in,
Yeah.
there's so much more that has to happen before his bill gets passed.
Yeah.
He has to present it to the House, which he tried to do, and then tried to get it passed within 2 days. Which
But in
didn't
this case, he
happen.
would have a proper majority. So I think it would expedite what he's trying to
Okay,
do.
Yeah.
but then the House have to look at the bill and make amendments.
Do that in 2 days.
And make amendments, and then that's got to go back to the EU.
Yeah.
They've got to look at it. It's all got to be ratified before it actually gets passed. But I think
Stop muddying the
No,
waters.
no, no. But if Boris gets in, and there is a chance that his bill will go through, the markets, the money markets, love a Conservative government.
Right.
Absolutely love a Conservative government. So I would expect the pound to increase in value, because there will be a resolution
Yeah.
that we're coming out and there is a deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they come out without a deal, which I think is actually illegal, they can't come out without a deal. I think that's actually legal. Then we will see the pound crash. My own personal prediction, as I said, I wouldn't be surprised if it hit parity. But that's my thoughts. That's not the thoughts of the company. But if we come out with a deal, and it's a deal that the Commons likes and the EU is happy with, then I think we're
So a
going to
win-win
see
for everyone.
125. Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
the Brit market will come back then.
Because at the moment we're at 116, 117 pound
Yeah.
against euro.
Yeah.
And I think the lowest has been this year about 109.
109,
Okay.
it hit.
So what we're saying, I mean, there's always been, what we've found as well in this business over God knows how many years, is that the psychological barrier of 120 has always been quite significant for the
Yes,
Brits. A lot of
yeah.
clients say to us, when it gets to 120, I'll be back in the market.
This is very funny because it took me 7 months to close a deal with a British client
Yeah.
who was in the carpet industry
Yeah.
to finalize the deal because he was waiting for 120.
Yep.
And we never got to 120. We got to 119, I think. And then he said, okay. I said, if you don't take it now, it's never going to go to 120.
Yeah.
He bought 2 months later, was at 122, and then it went down.
See, this is again somewhere where the company that I work for can actually help
Yeah, absolutely.
with these clients'
Absolutely.
expectations.
Because you lock the currency exchange then, right?
We can
You
do,
can do,
yeah.
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 You can,
On
you
a
can
forward
sort of-
contract.
I've used
Because-
Cookie several times in the past while I've been here, and she's great because she'll just let you know, and then you can just arrange with her and say, okay, what's realistic? What can we actually achieve? Okay, let's lock in the rate, and when it gets to that rate, you know the trade is done.
Yeah, because that's something that happened to us because it took 6 months of constant observation of the exchange rate.
Yeah, which is
At some days it would come to a favorable exchange rate, but then he wouldn't have the means and the measures to lock it.
Yeah.
And the next day it was back down 1, 2.
Yeah, you have to speak to a specialist.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of plan it with them.
Correct. I
and-
learned my lesson. It took 6 months
You know,
until I saw my
nobody
paycheck.
or very, very few people can call the bottom and the top of a market. So I always think if you can get to kind of close to where you
Yeah.
want to be, then you're
Yeah,
doing
like a
well.
happy medium.
Yeah, sure. And the thing is, with locking in a rate, what happens is with properties here in Spain, you know what the euro amount is. That is not going to change.
Exactly.
As the
Yeah,
property
yeah,
price.
yeah.
So when the exchange rate hits a good level, what the client should be doing is locking into that rate, and then we only require 10% of the funds that they've booked with us. But then what you've done is you've locked your sterling amount, and it doesn't matter what happens in the market. If the market drops, your sterling amount stays the same.
Yeah.
So it's like you're paying
Of course.
the exact amount that you should be paying, and not having to watch exchange rates
Yeah.
fluctuate and
Yeah.
go, oh, actually, I've lost
Yeah.
£20,000 today because
Yeah.
it is plummeted.
For
So-
busy people,
Yeah.
it's much better because
Yeah.
it just means you can just pass on the stress.
Well, it becomes like buying a house in the UK, where you've got
Yeah.
the fixed, that price is not going to change
Yeah, that's
on
right.
that property.
That's right.
I think for him it became an obsession. He loved
Right.
it.
Oh,
Every morning he would send me the currency exchange. He'd be like, well, if it hits this, we will. If
Yeah.
it comes to that, we will.
That sounds like me. That's something I do.
Yeah.
Annoy everybody. Say, oh, it's moved by
Yeah,
that much. I can save
it's
£20.
true.
Like, oh my god.
Imagine for a non-Brit, I'm sitting in my car, I'm just reading a nice article, or I'm eating my banana between a viewing, and I get every day around the same time a screenshot of the currency exchange rate. Like, I don't give a...
But Dom loves all his
Fine.
clients, really.
Yeah, I know that, yes, of course. No, but I'm getting them from Sean, that's the difference.
Yeah, okay, point taken. Okay, so that's if we get a Conservative government.
Yeah.
What if we get a Labour majority? Labour is the opposition party in the UK, for those of you who don't know, the main opposition party, led by a guy called Jeremy Corbyn, who is fairly left-wing in his views. So it's kind of like tax the top 5% of earners in the UK to help the people less fortunate and with less money.
Well,
A very good sentiment. But if Labour government gets in, either as a clear majority or maybe in coalition with the SNP or some other smaller parties, Cookie, what's going to happen to the markets?
My personal view, you're going to see the pound tank.
And is that just they just don't trust the Labour government?
There's too much uncertainty.
Okay.
There's far too much uncertainty. Even though with Boris Johnson and his policies, there is some kind of clear direction. That sounds like an oxymoron. There is some sort of direction of where they want to take the country. Whereas with Jeremy Corbyn, it's almost like he's taking the country backwards.
It reminded me. I listened to his manifesto
nationalising
yesterday.
the industry, which isn't a bad thing in some
No, I mean,
aspects.
hey, if I'm a public
nationalising.
sector worker and someone's going to give me 5% overnight pay rise, I'm going to be voting for it. To be honest.
But as I mentioned earlier before, he's robbing Peter to pay Paul, and it's not going to do the country any good because he wants to tax the really wealthy people to make up the deficit for the people that aren't earning. And as I said, you're robbing the rich to pay the poor,
Yeah.
which isn't good economics
So
at
what
all.
do you think would happen if that actually comes into
I
action?
reckon we'd see the pound go down to
And what do you think
104,
big investors would do? Because
103.
that clearly puts big investors, big companies at risk.
I think what we'll see is a flight of capital from the UK.
Yeah.
Because if you're a wealthy person or business and you're all of a sudden your tax liability is going to shoot up by another 20-30%.
Wouldn't that favour our business?
Because
Yeah,
we're going to.
well, hopefully they'll be investing overseas
Yeah.
in property.
Because I do know that even right now, British companies are investing heavily into Germany.
Mhm.
I know Frankfurt, for instance, that's the capital of business.
Mm.
The presence now has increased significantly over the past 2 years.
Yeah.
So is that something you see happening?
I don't really get involved in the business side of trades, because we have a corporate division in London. So that would be a question that I would need to ask them. Where are you seeing these corporate businesses purchasing other businesses or investing in other businesses in Europe? I just deal with buyers and sellers and people looking to, that are renting here or going back to the UK.
I think what we could see is a flight of wealth like there was in France. Was it when Hollande was he? No,
it was.
It was the socialist government, wasn't it? That got in, and I think the French millionaires started getting taxed like 80-90%, and they just went right. Stuff that we're off. Yeah, we're off, and that saw a flight of wealth to other countries, including Spain. So great, that's sorted. So if Boris gets in, pound's going to go up to 120, 125. All the Brits, the tax will turn on. All the Brits will come and buy. And if Corbyn gets in, all the millionaires from the UK will come and buy a villa in Spain.
So basically, the job is done.
And if Article 50 gets revoked,
I've been talking about that.
Then that would I personally feel we would see buying levels from the Brits as we saw in 2001, 2002.
Okay, wow.
If Article 50 is cancelled.
And what happens to the what would, I know you can't say for sure, but where do you personally see the exchange rate going in the event that we revoking Article 50, for those who aren't sure, means that we basically reset the clock and stay in the EU and just cancel the whole Brexit nonsense?
I reckon you'll probably see levels of 130.
Okay.
May I ask a question so
Yes.
that we also seem a bit humane
Okay.
here? Because we're talking a lot about business, about money. Obviously, this podcast is about how the real estate market's going to develop in the next year, dependent on Brexit and so forth. But being British, the both of you, what do you think is best for your country, for the people? Not just to talk about the money.
Personally?
Yeah, personally, because I
What
want
for the election?
I want the British listeners to also see what you as a Brit would think is best for the country, not for our economic situation.
For our own selfish reasons.
I think everybody has a selfish reason, don't they? And I've got friends who are Leavers, I've got friends who are Remainers, I've got family members one side of the fence over the other. I personally think it's really sad that I moved here 19 years ago. I didn't even think about it. I just did it and set up a business here and started to earn money here, paid my taxes here, and I got married here, and I created a life here without even thinking about, am I allowed to do this? And I think it's really upsetting for me, and it's a shame, I think, that future generations won't have the freedom to do that. And that's the reason that I'm a Remainer, if you like, but I'm also a Democrat. And I recognise that the UK public, whether they have all the information or not, is a completely different argument. But I'm a believer that democracy has to be pursued, otherwise you end up in chaos. And that the British people made a democratic decision to leave the EU, and that we should.
But you said you're a Remainer. That's a terminology probably used by you Brits. That means you want to stay within the European Union.
I was actually a Leaver.
Is that true? But is that true?
Yeah.
Okay, so you want England to stay in the European Union?
Yeah, but now that the referendum has taken place, which was a fair, legitimate vote, although it had its issues and its challenges, the British people have decided by a majority, a fairly clear majority, that they want to leave the EU. So I think the government should crack on with doing that. I think that the difficulty has been in the way that they've done it and the deal that has been agreed. I think there's so many scenarios that could have been chased that weren't, but. Hey,
seeing it from an outsider, I always had not that, but I always had the feeling people never knew the consequences of their vote, of their action, and often it is something you get pulled into. You have this ideology that you might be propagated upon, and you follow the masses, and you say, let's get out of the European Union, but what will that actually subsequently mean for my job, for my life, for my children, for the education of my children, for everything?
Yeah, but that's
people underestimated that, in my opinion, but my opinion is very humble because I only see it from an ego's perspective.
I think it depends who you are and where you live. I mean, we're both British, we both live in Spain, and we didn't want Brexit to happen, but that's possibly because we live in Spain.
I mean, as I said, I was a Leaver. If I could vote, I would have voted to leave.
Yeah.
And a lot of that had to do with the fact that the UK is a sovereign nation and it's been dictated by the United States of Europe, which is that's what I call it.
Oh, it's not perfect by any means.
No, of course it's not. And a lot of people say that the EU was created obviously to help Germany because of the powerhouse of Europe, and it hasn't really worked for the UK. But
I don't think it's working for the.
No, I don't think it is. No, I don't think it is.
And I love your terminology of United
States of Europe.
It's fantastic because it's American control. but this is
now
going
we're
very
into
far.
deep politics.
Yeah.
But
I love that,
after looking at, I was in the UK before the referendum took place. I was at a property show, and I spoke to so many people, and I was asking them what they're going to vote. Oh, we're voting to leave. Okay, why are you voting to leave? And then I would say to them, oh, don't tell me why. I know why you're voting to leave. It's because of immigration. Yes, it is. Okay, you just need to educate yourself. That doesn't mean leave the EU. You need to change your government. If that's what you've got a problem with, change your government. Don't leave the EU. But I've learned so much more now about what the implications of the UK leaving the EU and what that means for future generations as well.
That's the thing that gets me. I say to people, why did you vote leave? And they say, you try living in the UK at the moment. You try living in a village where everything is under strain, the health service, everything, and immigration played a big part, I'm sure. And whether that was a misdirected thing, I don't know. But I don't know. I don't live in the UK, so I can't really comment.
I have one question that I'm sure a lot of people that are not from Britain have asked themselves. Was Britain even ever part of the European Union?
Or were we just playing?
It's just because, I give you a very little example. My girlfriend's from Russia, right? We go to Germany, she doesn't need a visa if she goes for holiday. We want to go to Britain, she needs to apply for a visa. But Britain is part of EU, so it should have the same rules and rights as Germany.
It's not part of Schengen, is it?
It's not part of Schengen, but it's these little confusions that people outside of Britain see and don't understand. Do you know what I mean? Because they say, oh, England's part of the EU, that means it should have the same rights. And people generalize that.
Yeah.
So
it's part of the European Economic Area.
Yes, that I understand.
But EU kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what was amazing. I took a trip, I forget where I was going, but I ended up travelling through about 4 or 5 different countries by plane without showing my passport once. And I thought, ooh.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure how I felt about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I was kind of like, this is great.
You're so used to going, here's my passport, I'm British.
Yes. But it was like, wow, this is excellent. And I thought, it's great for me. That means it's great for other people who really shouldn't be doing this. Yeah. And anyway, look, we're on to different matters. So let's wrap up. Okay, so the UK buyers are there in spirit at the moment. I think the majority of them, particularly at the middling levels. I think the super rich don't get affected too much by this sort of stuff, but we are expecting, once Brexit is sorted by Boris, that the exchange rate is likely to go up, that Brits will be back in the market quite substantially, and particularly if we also revoke Article 50, which seems unlikely, but you never know. And if we get a Labour government in the UK, then
big corporations will move out.
Well, there'll be a flight of money somewhere, I think. Yeah. So there might be opportunities for the Spanish property market to attract some of those clients. Yeah. Are you happy with that as a summary?
I'm just happy if everyone turns out to be happy, which is a very difficult task.
You can't keep everyone happy all the time, can you? That's the problem. And I
think
we're going
winners and losers.
And I think we're going through a phase that we'll look back, I won't look back because I'll be long in the ground, but we'll look back at it and say it was just one of those phases of history that,
it's definitely a historic event.
Of course, this is going to affect generations to come.
They'll be teaching us in history classes in 50 years.
I just quickly wanted to bring something up. If Britain leaves the European Union, the question is, won't other European countries want to do the same too?
They can't do it.
No,
because it's actually been put into their constitutions that they cannot have a referendum and leave.
And whenever has a cannot stop someone from.
Well, it wasn't written into the constitution of the UK, but because the EU don't want to cause contagion within Europe. Because there was noises about Finland wanting to come out. There was noises about the Netherlands wanting to come out. Italy, but they cannot hold a referendum, just like it happened with Greece. When Greece was going through all that trouble, and the Prime Minister, I think his name was Tsipras at the time, he held a referendum in his country regarding EU membership.
Yes.
Because of the constraints that were being put on Greece, the public voted unanimously to come out of the EU. He turned around and went, okay, we're staying in. So the EU do not want to cause contagion. This is why they're making it so difficult for the UK to leave as well.
Thank you so much for answering that, because that's also something that people outside the, let's call, knowledge of what's happening with Brexit always wonder and ask themselves. So it's very nice that you clarified that.
Yeah, Italy won't be able to leave, and they want to.
Good.
Okay.
Maybe
Yeah.
not good. Excellent. Thank you so much for listening. What we're going to do, you know all about us, we're probably boring you to death, but this lady, Cookie, we're going to put her email address and contact details on this video.
Yeah.
So if you have any concerns or questions about the currency exchange and the rates and stuff like that, if you're a buyer, potential buyer, or a seller here in Spain, then please get in touch with her.
Or an agent who wants to close a deal faster than I did, which is 6 months. Go Cookie.
Yeah, exactly. You might
Yeah,
need
that client, you should be speaking with me.
Exactly, yeah.
100% agreed.
Yeah.
And I learned from my mistake, and Cookie, rest assured.
Till
You'll
next
be
time.
fantastic.
Till next time. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
tuning in, and we will wish you a very pleasant weekend.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.